my friend?
How are you, my dear friend?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. We are excited to have you here with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything I can do for you, anything I can do to help, I will. So, what are your questions? What do you want to know, Marco Flores?
Yeah. First of all, yeah, let me present these guys. Most of them are going to participate in a contest that I call it a blind wine taster. So you know some of them because the last time that you came to Mexico, you were tasting together. And I was thinking that you could be kind of a mentor today to give any advice about how do you practice your blind tasting at home, for example. And that's and maybe it's the first question. How do you prepare yourself for a blind tasting? That it's one of the biggest challenge that you have since you were applying for Master Sommelier, for example, and then for the Sommelier of Americas. And I think that uh, how should we start? Because I mean, there's a lot of information around, and sometimes the first problem is how should I start training?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that people should be doing is trying to smell things, and we don't smell things enough. We don't smell the food that we ate. And there's maybe 10,000 aromas in a glass of wine. So somebody can say, oh, this is pineapple, this is guava, this is whatever. I mean, it doesn't really matter what you say it's in the glass. What matters is it makes sense to you. The second thing that is very important when blind tasting is to have theory. Instead of trying to find what's in the glass, you need to assess what's in the glass. So be honest, it smells this and this and that, and it tastes this and this and that. And then after trying to make a logical conclusion. Because everybody say that food and wine is subjective. It's not subjective, it's objective. When you start being objective about things, you start having greater result and a higher percentage of guessing what the wine is. And I would like to present a very small share screen where I will tell you a few tricks that I do in the blind tasting. So we see image, and that way you can, maybe it's going to resonate with you, if that makes sense, Marco.
Yes, makes sense a lot. Yeah, you can share it now if you want. Uh,
So this is a presentation I did last night for a client. I mean, they are not professional taster, but it's trying to democratize. I mean, this is foie gras. This is a wine university where I've been, Chateau, where I work in London, where I work in Sydney, when I win Best Young Sommelier of the World, New York, Santa Cruz in California, Americas. Then I live in Quebec City, and here we go. So the idea here is that the first thing you want to do when you taste wine is to have a look at the glass. You want to have a look at the glass, and by having a look at the glass, the color, you can already start to collect evidence. Evidence like if you are playing a clue game, you
yeah,
want to say, oh, it's Colonel Mustard in the living room with the chandelier that killed da 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 da. You don't want to say, oh, this is a Cabernet Sauvignon from Bordeaux. That doesn't make sense. Nobody can do that. You want to say, because the color like this, because it smelled that, because the tannins are high and it tastes like oak. It is Bordeaux from Medoc on 2015, a very ripe vintage. You want to try to make something logical. So this is very professional, advanced taster. But if you are an amateur taster, you want to go with your guts feeling, with whatever you've tasted in your life. You want to say, oh, this remember a good night, with Marco Flores when we drink Bordeaux. So it is Bordeaux, You gotta listen to yourself. Now, if you want to train to a higher level, you gotta taste, you gotta be logical, and you're gonna think about it like a detective. You are not trying to find what it is, but you are collecting evidence to build a case and then accuse a type of wine or a varietal or a vintage, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So 90% of the taste and the color of wine is within the skin. You know that if you grow grape in Mexico, where there's a lot of sun, the berries, they cannot put sunscreen on. So the skin goes thicker and it produces a more concentrated in color wine. That's why if you go to California or Australia where it's very, very sunny, you have very, very deep style of wine, a lot of color. So when you see a wine with a lot of color, you should say, oh, two things. Possibility number one, it's coming from a sunny region. Possibility number two, it's coming from a grape varietal that has the capacity to have a thick skin. And then it's all about theory, right? You need to know what are those grape varietal, and you need to know which region in the wine world are sunny. When we produce red wine, we put the skin with the juice because the juice is clear. That's why there is blanc de noir in champagne, a white champagne produced with pinot noir, a black grape varietal. So you see on the picture here what is the skin and the juice together that produce red wine. When we produce white wine, we only use the juice. And when we produce orange wine, well, we use the skin and the juice of the white wine. And that's why we have a tinted color and something that goes orange because it oxidizes. Now, you want to smell the wine. And this is a very good picture at Best Sommelier of Quebec where I don't know what is the wine. I cannot find it. I don't see anything that I recognize. So I open my mouth, just like when you eat and you swallow, you have retroolfaction going. By opening your mouth, you're smelling with your nose, but it also goes into your mouth and it goes into your bulb, olfactive bulb, and then you perceive aromas. And instead of going into the glass, you take the glass to your nose. And a little bit like a German shepherd at Mexico City Airport, you try to do small sniff. Not because you will not smell anything. When you take deep breath, it's for meditation. When you try to smell, it's short breath.
Okay.
Okay? Then 90% of the grape varietals smell like strawberries. But what you want to try to find as a professional taster, a little bit like a muscle scar, RPM, you want to find, is it like fresh strawberries, wild strawberries, strawberry compote, strawberry jam, strawberry candy? It's still the same smell of the strawberry, but imagine the guy, the picker of the grape that goes into the field. When they decide to pick the grape, 2 days earlier, 2 days after, very important. The jamminess, the quality of the fruit, you can smell it. If you buy strawberry at the supermarket and you leave them on the counter, they're going to rotten. But before rotting, they're going to be very sweet and they smell different. If you put some sugar and you do a compote, it smells like compote. If you put a little bit of pectin in the compote, it smells like jam. It's still the same, exact same strawberry. Same thing goes with lemon. Same thing goes with a lot of aromas. So the professional taster, by smelling strawberry jam, it is impossible that the wine come from a fresh region like Loire Valley in northern France. It has to come from a sunny region where the ripeness is intense. And that's what we try to find as professional taster. The fact that it smells like strawberry is not helping me. The fact that it smells like fresh strawberries, like in Beaujolais, or very ripe strawberries, like in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, will help me. Still the same strawberries, but different level of ripeness. Then you need to spit, because the more you drink, the more you get intoxicated. And when you get intoxicated, your focus, your concentration is not there. Very different to taste than to share a bottle of wine with friends. And then there is four things that you need to think when you're putting the wine on the palate. The first thing is tannins. Tannin is a protein that get associated with your saliva and create dryness. If you put a tea pouch into hot water for too long, it creates dryness. If you roast the coffee bean too much, you burn them and it creates dryness. So the tannins, how much it dries your mouthfeel is very important because according to the grape varietal, well, Cabernet Sauvignon, very high in tannins. Pinot Noir, very low in tannins. So if you are able to recognize the level of tannins, already you're going in one direction or the other. The other thing is acidity. Acidity is salivation. When you bite into a lemon, you salivate because you have acidity, so your pH in the mouthfeel is trying to recreate. If you drink lemonade, you salivate. If you drink Grüner Veltliner from Austria, which is very fresh white wine from a fresh region, you salivate. If you drink Chardonnay from California, you don't salivate too much. So you got to pay attention to the level of acidity. And the level of acidity is linked to the latitude, the grape varietal, and the wine region. Then sugar. Most of the wine that we taste are dry because sugar is consumed by the yeast, and the yeast produce alcohol. And that brings me to my last point, alcohol. When you drink mezcal or tequila, you have the burnt ear, you know, it burns. You drink a nice beer after to refresh. But when you taste a wine from California, for example, or Mexico, where it's very hot, it means the grape are very sweet. So if they are very sweet, they are very high in alcohol. So again, you need to pay attention to the alcohol level. If you drink German Riesling, 9% alcohol, you don't feel anything. So you got to pay attention. If you're tasting something that burn a little, you might be in a hot or sunny region. If you taste something that doesn't burn at all, you're in a fresher region. And then it all comes down to balance. All those things together bound, and it creates balance. And every grape varietal, every region have a different balance. This is Spain, obviously, we all know, and this is the end of the presentation because it was on Spanish wine. I mentioned yesterday that I was tasting garnacha, a very, very, very simple garnacha that sells for $10 from the region of Manchuela. Manchuela is south of Madrid. Very high altitude, Grenache, Garnacha, and it produced a very simple wine, easy to drink, great with tapas, very, very easy to drink. A little bit like a Beaujolais, but with the spiciness of the Grenache. So when I look at this wine, I see a wine that is a little pale in color. Spain is a very sunny place, but Grenache, you need to know, for instance, with that grape varietal, that it's like the Pinot Noir of the South, very thin skin. So never too much color in Grenache or Garnacha. The advantage of Grenache, why it's planted in Spain, in California, maybe in Mexico, is that it's drought resistant. So it can resist to a lack of water. And that's why you have it a lot in Spain and California, for example, south of France as well. Then I see a pale wine, but when I smell, it's very ripe. So the first thing I see in my head, not a lot of grape varietal can be pale and very ripe. So I start thinking and collecting evidence. Then why it's very ripe? Because the strawberry smell compote, because there is this kind of cherry aroma, but cherry preserved in alcohol. There is a little bit of cinnamon spice coming from the grape varietal. Very few grape varietals smell like spices because there's no oak on the wine. It's purity of fruit, very cheap, easy drinking wine. There's a little bit of pepper. And there is also something like salsichon, you know, like a cured meat. Something meaty, Very few grape varietals smell meaty. Maybe Syrah, maybe Gamay, maybe a few, but very few. But if it was Syrah, it would be much darker than that because I know Syrah has a very thick skin varietal. So maybe it's Gamay, maybe it's Grenache. That's what I'm thinking. So I put it on the palate. Almost no tannins. Alcohol, it's warm. So it cannot be Beaujolais because Beaujolais is fresh region, always 12% alcohol. This one tastes like it's ripe, it's warm. There's not a lot of tannins. There's not a lot of acidity. So it's a very warm place. You know, the grape were ripe. It's still very delicate and very short on the palate. You know, I just taste it and I don't taste it anymore. But that's the idea behind the wine. It's a simple, delicious glass of wine. But if it doesn't last on the palate, like Bordeaux, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Burgundy, blah, 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 well, it has to be cheap. Because what is very expensive in food and wine is things that last for a long time. Caviar, black truffle, foie gras. I don't know how you call it, Marco, but the eggs of the ants. How do you call that?
The one, escamoles.
Escamoles, you know, things that are very rare, but also that taste for a long time, that has a special texture, are pricey. So when you are tasting pricey wine, it tastes for a long time. And that's what is Meursault, all the great wine. This is a simple wine, you know? So I'm also thinking from a professional taster, if it's simple, it cannot go for a lot of money because you cannot ask people to pay $100 for a bottle of wine that doesn't taste like much. It's a simple wine. It's a vino de la tierra. You know, it's simple, table wine, but delicious, you know. Things don't need to be complicated all the time. It can be simple and delicious, and that's what it is. So then I will retaste maybe, and then I will do what I call a first conclusion. So my first conclusion, I'm saying to myself, well, you know, because of the meatiness, the spiciness, it is probably old world. It's probably European. Now, because it was spicy and a little bit of alcohol, I think it can be Grenache. I think it can be a blend of Mourvèdre because I'm talking about southern regions. So Monastrell, Grenache. I'm thinking maybe it could be Syrah, but there was no tannin. But I'm just doing a little bit of a pre-conclusion. I'm thinking out loud. Maybe it is those varietal from this country, and it was feeling quite fresh. So if it's feeling quite fresh, it's young. So maybe 1 or 3 years. We are in 2021. So between 18 and 21, I mean, it's possible. Then when I do my final conclusion, I need to accuse the Colonel Mustard with the chandelier in the living room. So I will explain why. Because I say it's spicy. Because I say there's some warm, some alcohol, not too much tannin and a light wine. For me, it speaks of me to Grenache from a Spanish country because it's a simple wine and most of the Grenache in France are in blend or they are a little bit more complex. On a 2019 vintage, I can even say the price, it's probably something that will go for 10 or 15 bucks. And then I can even say with what I would like to eat the wine. You know, yesterday during the presentation, we have a nice saucisson, you know, classic Catalano artisano fouet, you know, pork sausage with a little bit of salsa de tomato fresco, a little bit of garlic, grilled bread, and olive oil. Simple, you know, tapas, very simple, but something that, you know, I smell a little bit of sun-dried tomato. The acidity of the tomato is going to bring my palate to salivate. You have the wine that is a little richer. It's going to mix well with the charcuterie, boom, 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 done. Simple food, simple wine. I don't want something too complicated. So why not having a nice taco with a little bit of the smoky chipotle crema or something like that, in that kind of idea. I'm not a specialist of taco, but something smoky because it smells very spicy, almost smoky, but no oak, which is very characteristic of Grenache. But I want some richness. I want some fat in the palate because there is alcohol. You know, you want something a little not greasy but rich. That's why I'm thinking pork, and then that's it. But when you are a professional taster, this happens at a very, very, very fast pace. It goes like boom, 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 boom in your mind. And this is practice. If you are a football player like El Matador, you need to practice every day to become a legend. What people think, they think that they're gonna smell the glass, they're gonna find it, and that's it. That's not the way. That's not the way. If you want to be a good cook, you need to cook every day. If you want to be a good taster, you need to taste almost every day. Usually, I don't taste on Sunday. I have a nice family meal and I drink the wine without thinking about it. But I try to taste every day and new things all the time. And I try to pay attention because 3 times a day we eat. I don't drink 3 times a day, but I pay attention to what I put in my mouth and what I put in my body. And that's very important. When you start paying attention, you are slowing the pace down, slowing the time, but you are realizing things, you know, because you're paying attention to detail. If you think about Pablo Picasso, why he's a genius, he was taking his time. You know, he was paying attention to detail. That's why you can do things that are still remembered today. I'm not trying to be Pablo Picasso. I'm just trying to tell you that we are living in a very fast-paced world. And if you don't take your time, you will miss on a lot of good opportunities. And tasting is no different. Do you have any question, Marco?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I have a question. I have a few questions. Before a competition, for example, or when you pass the master exam, uh, before your competition, what kind of exercises do you do in the morning, for example, before you go there? Do you taste before? Do you do something extra? You do meditation, or what do you do before to do the tasting in a competition?
Hey, I'm gonna switch because you don't see me. I'm like in the dark here, okay?
Yeah,
It's gonna take 1 minute, okay?
no
I'm
problem.
just
Yeah, yeah,
turning
yeah,
off the camera and
yeah,
it's
yeah.
gonna take 1 minute.
Ok. Y pueden poner, si no quieren prender su video, no quieren hacer las preguntas directos, pueden hacerlos aquí en el chat, chicos. Vale la pena que aprovechen. Creo que eh, sería interesante. Pay attention. Eso es importante. A veces estamos en modo...
Taste every day.
Sí, sí, sí.
Yeah.
Okay, that's better, guys. Sorry for that.
Don't worry.
Okay, so hey, it's better, but it's not really. Let's try to bring that light closer.
Yeah, you put it in front of you. Yeah, yeah, like that.
Okay, so here we are. So the idea here is the same with football. I go to football pitch and I see father and mother telling the young kid, "Oh, you didn't do well. You didn't shoot or you didn't pass. What are you doing?" Blah, blah, blah. I mean, this is not going to get your kid to become better. It can push him to persevere, but at some point, you don't win with negativity. So when you want to taste and have a good day or whatsoever, one of the things that is very important to do is to think about a place where you are in security, where you are happy, where you are well, you know? So you were talking about meditation. I'm not really doing meditation before tasting. But I'm trying to close my eyes or to think about something positive, something that I love. When I was a young boy, I was going to sleep and I couldn't sleep. And my mother, my grandmother, they used to tell me, think about something beautiful and you're gonna fall asleep. Think about a nice field with roses. Think about your friends at school. Think about things that you love that makes you feel good. You need to feel good to be good. Okay? What
Okay.
you say is what you are. So that's the first tip. The second thing that I start realizing with competition is a very funny story. One day I was studying, I think it was for Best Army of the Americas, studying a lot every day, like military, boom, 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 boom. And it was the birthday of my father-in-law. So my wife, she said we need to go to the country to celebrate my father's birthday. And in my mind, I was like, I don't give a fuck about this, about my father-in-law. I don't want to celebrate his birthday. I have a competition to win. Stop bugging me. But in a good marriage, you need to do effort. And I didn't say that to my wife. I was thinking it, but I said, okay, let's go. It was a winter day. There was a little bit of a snowstorm. I mean, we went to the country, and the place where my father-in-law lives is where my wife was born, and is the same village where I was born. About 500 people live in the village, very small town. And we had a dinner. We had a little bit of a laugh. We had a nice cake to finish. Simple family dinner. Anniversary, or should I say birthday.
Yeah.
When I went out of the house, I look at the scenery outside, the field, the wind, the snow, the darkness of the 9th of March it was. And I said to myself, wow, I really feel like home here. It's a special place, I really love it. Not at my father-in-law's place, but in the village, I feel like really good. The day after, I have a practice, a training session for the competition. The day I arrive not prepared, without studying, without being obsessed by anything. I just arrived and I did it. And it was one of the best day of my life. It felt so good. And I start asking myself, questioning myself, you know what? Yeah, you can train as much as you want, but life is about momentum and peaking at the right time. It doesn't matter if during the season you are the best team in the NFL, if you go to the Super Bowl and you lose to the New York Giants. Talk to Tom Brady and Randy Moss. Best team in the NFL, 17 win, the best quarterback of all time, one of the greatest wide receiver. They come to the Super Bowl flat, nothing. They lose against Eli Manning and the New York Giants. The odds in Las Vegas was crazy, but they lost. Why? Because they didn't peak at the right moment. It's about momentum, Life is multiple cycles. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. It doesn't matter. Think about you, Marco. You had COVID, you had a business, a family, and this and that, and suddenly nothing. And you start doing those Instagram and continue to hustle. And we had a conversation. I'm a little bit lost. I don't know what to do. I mean, I used to do a lot of business with people and being in front of people, and I cannot anymore. Where are we going with the crisis? Hotels in Mexico, crazy. Tourists, crazy. Nobody is traveling anymore. Okay, it's about momentum. There's things you can control. There's things you cannot control. But you need to control yourself. And if you taste good, if you taste bad, it's you, only you. So why not put yourself in a good condition before tasting? Think about it, a wedding or baptism. Baptism is always the best. You can feel the energy in the church because everybody is in a good mindset. And I believe a lot into that. If you think positive, things positive happens to you. If you think about, well, things happens to you. So if you want to have a good day, you start your day with a beautiful smile, nice cup of coffee, and even if it's not an easy day, you say, well, I'll do my best, and that's it. And I really think that by projecting yourself positively in the future or in the next hour or in the next 10 minutes, you will, and I'm not here to do that kind of speech, but you ask me the question, you
Yeah,
will somehow get a result. You will somehow get a result. For me, there's no way. Intention. It's not about visualization or any of that bullshit. There's people talking about that, and that's okay. Maybe it works. For me, it's about the intention. When you love, you love. When you give, you give. When you share, you share. So it's the same thing with tasting. You go, the stress is there. Why the stress is there is because you care. But at the end of the day, the intention. Do it with the intention, and good things gonna happen. And it's a lot about learning too. It's a learning curve. You need to fall to stand up again like a baby. You
yeah,
need sometimes to hurt yourself to feel what is pain. But you need also to go through joy and good time and so on. When it's rainy, but it will be sunny after the rain. And when it's too sunny and we need rain for the field because the avocado needs to grow, it's going to be rainy at some point. But we don't control that. We don't control that.
yeah. Wow, it's a very very good advice. I think to be positive, it's all about the attitude, as you mentioned. Yeah, I agree with you. And you changed my mind immediately in another way to think about a contest, because sometimes when you are more focused in theory practicing, you never think about these kind of situations. It's very important to know your point of view, and I really really appreciate it. So in terms of in techniques, I always have problems with different appellations that gives me some problems, I would say. For example, when you taste Brunelos versus Barolos, sometimes I said, "Oh, this is a Brunello." No, 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 this is a Barolo. At the end of the time, both of them are from Italy, very, very similar, but sometimes it's very hard for me to understand those differences. The same thing happens to me with Rioja and Pinot Noir, but in old vintages, for example. And same thing with the Chablis with some Sancerres. I don't know, because the minerality is too much and things like that. So I don't know if you can get me
Okay, I
how.
will help you, but what you are asking is very, very, very fine tuning. Okay.
Okay.
You need to understand that, let's say you are repairing cars, right? You are repairing cars, it's your job, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you've seen it all, you've been doing it for the 30 years. I mean, you are a very good mechanic. But then if you want to work in Formula One, is about very small detail. So what you're talking about is very small detail here, okay? Very small detail. And, details is hard. Everything is in details. The difference between a very good taco and a good taco is that they take the tortilla and they put it on the meat before. Very small detail, but it changed the taco.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
if you don't know, if it's not in your culture and you don't pay attention, you're not doing that, and you have a dry taco. And when you eat, it's dry. So, anyway, what I want to say is that if you take Brunello and Barolo, for me, the biggest difference is in the tannins. Both are high in tannins and very, very dry. But Barolo tends to, it's about texture. For me, it's a little bit more like needle tannin, like very small tannin, and they attack your gum, not your cheeks, your tongue, everything, but your gum as well. Okay, so that's tactile. But then you need to taste, to taste, to taste, to taste. That's, for me, that's the main difference.
mhm.
Then if you talk about older wine, like Rioja and Pinot Noir, well, old wine, they don't smell like fruit anymore. They just smell like old wine. So you need to pay attention to the texture. And then again, Rioja is always with oak aging and new oak aging, and often American oak. So you have this profile of coconut, and you have this profile of sandalwood and esparto, like that feel of almost like dusty, something like a red earth, like when the wind goes in the desert, as opposed to Pinot Noir, which is a little silkier. Why Pinot Noir is legendary is because it's satin-like, very delicate. But you need to pay attention because it's small details.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Chablis and Sancerre. Well, Chablis and Sancerre is virtually neighbors. Same soils, same latitude, different grape varietal, very mineral in both cases. But there is something very different. If you think about Sancerre, it's Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc is aromatic, okay? A lot of green, what we call pyrazine, so kind of green bell pepper, asparagus, peas, anything that is green, mint, Thai basil, cilantro, whatever, it tastes green and it's aromatic. Chardonnay, it tastes like nothing. And the reason why Chardonnay is planted everywhere on the planet is because it's a good translator of terroir, depending where it's planted. So you have great Chardonnay coming from California, great Chardonnay coming from Chablis, great Chardonnay coming from Australia, great Chardonnay coming from Spain. It's a very versatile grape varietal because if you taste Chardonnay, it tastes like nothing. So you need to put it in new oak, so it tastes buttery and creamy. And there is no new oak in Chablis. So what they do is they steer the lees. So the dead cell of yeast that eat the sugar to produce alcohol, they steer it. And when you steer the lees, you have the fresh bread aroma, and you have the malolactic that goes into it. Why? Because it's so up north that if you drink Chablis with no malolactic, it tastes, you need to take Tums, anti-reflux pills. So it always smells like creamy or something like crème fraîche or crema mexicana, or even somebody said one day, it smelled like when the baby
Yes.
You don't have any lee steering in Sancerre. Why? Because it's aromatic. So when you have aromatic varietal, you don't need to add another aroma to it. It's already aromatic. So I would say that the detail between Chablis and Sancerre is a lot on the creaminess, the lee steering, so something yeasty or something creamy, which you never really have in Sancerre, apart maybe from two producers that do things. But, this is, again, it's detail, because there will always be an exception, always be an exception. Canada won Gold Cup. It's an exception. It's an exception. Yeah. An exception. It will not happen again.
Yeah. I agree. Wow. Here we have two questions, and Jose Sandoval is asking, how many wines do you use for this daily training exercise?
You don't need to taste a lot, because the more you taste, the less attention you pay. But you need to do it every day. So if you taste 2 wines every day, at the end of the year, you will taste 600 wine. It's a lot.
Okay.
But, like when I was working in a restaurant, we always take a little bit of a taste. Yeah. But instead of just checking if it's cork or no cork, I pay attention. So it's about paying attention. And trust me, 2 weeks ago, for some reason, we have a discussion with my wife, and she said, okay, let's try to stop drinking. I stopped drinking completely, okay, from one day to another. And I continued to taste, and I was paying attention even more. When you slow down, you pay attention. Imagine you take a fork, or you take a taco, or whatever, and you take a mole, And mole is very good example because mole is very complex, right? Very complicated to make. Every bite, you take it, you chew, and you think about what you are eating and the flavor, not necessarily trying to find the spice, but just realizing that you are in what we call in French pleine conscience, so full awareness of what you are going through. Instead of just eating and saying, "Oh, it's good, I'm eating, I'm starving, I'm eating," you
Mm,
are full awareness. By being full awareness, you're paying attention, and then suddenly you're realizing, "Oh, that mole is no good. It's powder. They used a packet of mole." Or, "Wow, that mole is made by somebody that understand mole because there's balance of that and balance of that, and it's so complex and long and da 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 da."
yeah.
But if Pier-Alexis Souliére go to Mexico, never had mole in his life, where do I start? I have my own background of I know what is good food and bad food, but I never had mole. So I start somewhere where I need to start somewhere. I need to pay attention. And then I go with Marco and we taste 5 different mole. And then at the end, Marco didn't say anything to me. And I said, "Listen, I think the first mole was like this, the second like this." And then he can explain me the subtleties. Even though it's not part of my culture, I am intelligent enough to understand the context around mole, how it's made, why there is chocolate, why the chicken is poached, why it's done that way, and why this one is very good, so on and so on and so on. It's the same thing with wine. If you are not paying attention, you don't need to taste 1,000 wine. It's not about the quantity, it's about the quality. It's like me and Marco. I don't see him a lot, but when we see each other, we take the time. We have a good laugh. We take care of each other. It's meaningful, you know?
Yeah.
I don't see him every week. I see him maybe once a year, but this is pre-COVID. But when we see each other, he's a friend. I take the time. If we take a coffee, we take a coffee. We are not on the cell phone rushing after something else. We care. It's the same thing. If you decide to smell the wine, you need to take your time. Stop trying to find things. Let the wine talk to you. Speak, recognize, pay respect, pay attention. You do this twice a day, 2 different wine. In 1 year from now, you can present yourself to a Master Sommelier Challenge. I trust me. You don't need much.
Wow.
You just need to be quality when you're there. Don't do it to say that you've done it.
Yeah.
Last
Okay.
thing, I work in 3 Michelin star restaurant. Okay, it costs $500 US for one meal.
Wow.
They receive the plate, they take the phone, they take a picture. I go to see the guest. I say, "Listen, if you have more pleasure telling Instagram that you are having this food than eating the food, you don't need to stay for long. We do a photo shoot and it's going to be done. You don't need to pay for the meal. We do a photo shoot every month for our Instagram account. I will give you the picture. Don't come here to lose your time and pay 500 US dollar to take picture of food. If you eat
Yeah.
with us, you eat. I mean, you are a journalist. What's going on? You know. But this is the world we live in, and we need to respect each other.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you
But
are not there, you are doing things, then better do something else. And if you don't feel like being there, do something else. Do something that you like.
yeah. Yeah. I agree. Wow. I will start. I will stop posting plates in my Instagram now. Or no.
No,
No.
no, no,
But
no, 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 no. Hey, Marco, this is about business. I
yeah.
need
It's
to
a
do
different.
posts as well. I don't like to do that. I don't like to do that. But this is part of the new reality.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah. Yeah.
stop doing it, you are not in the 21st century and you are missing on something.
Yeah.
Because I love looking at your picture and your stories. The only thing that I say is that if you take 20 minutes before eating your steak because you need to take picture and text your community and blah blah blah, you're not eating steak anymore. Taking a picture is taking a picture. Okay? So it's the same thing with wine, you know, like I'm not telling you, oh, be focused all the time. The worst thing with passion is that the closest thing to passion is obsession. You don't want to be obsessed. You take a picture, you take a picture. If you start being obsessed by your cell phone, different level.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and we have a question from Roberto. Roberto, ¿quieres abrir tu micro?
Yes, thank you. Hi, Pierre. Robert from Mexico City. Pierre, I have a question about the temperature. The temperature in wines for testing training should be the same like in service, because I have in my mind that temperature in service is to achieve pleasure, but I don't know if that temperature can help me to collect the more possible information about that wine.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I think professional tasting or tasting wine, trying to blind taste, is very different than enjoying wine, okay? And it's the same thing with food. There is optimal temperature, but obviously if the wine is too cold, we don't smell a lot. If the wine is too hot, we kind of, we perceive things differently. See, if you drink Coca-Cola ice cold, if you drink Coca-Cola hot, it's not the same. If you drink Coca-Cola with no bubbles or with bubbles, it's not the same. It's still the same Coca-Cola. So of course, temperature impact the perception, but realistically, if you are looking at the competition, most of the wine will be served around the same temperature, so maybe 18 degree for the red and 10 degree for the white. Then it depends, you know. I'm just saying that as to give you a range. Everybody has their different standard, but it's true that if you want to find the wine, to have always taste at the same temperature is good. But imagine that you always taste at the same temperature, and in the competition, they decide it's a different temperature. You need to be able to adapt, I think. To go back to your question, tasting professionally is very different than enjoying wine in a dinner scenario, you know. I like, personally, when I go to Mexico, unless I'm inside, I like to have the wine red, white, rosé, always in an ice bucket, because it's so hot that when you pour that much, even if it's at 4 degrees, in 1 minute, it is already at the good temperature. Same thing when I go to Spain and Portugal and Italy. Often I go in tapas bar and they keep the wine on the counter on the shelf. And I say, I want an ice bucket. And they look at me, oh, fucking tourist, blah, blah, blah. Like, come on, man. Put the red wine in the ice bucket. I don't want to drink a red wine that is the temperature of my coffee, especially that it stayed on the shelf all day. But this is me. I mean, I think also that perception is different. When it's hot, when it's cold, the way we taste is different. When it's summer, we want to eat certain things. When it's winter, we want to eat other things. And wine is no different. And the temperature of wine is no different. You know, if you drink a nice glass of port and a big piece of blue cheese when it's July in Mexico, but when it's December and it's Christmas, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. And we have another question: how to blind taste blends? It is more complicated.
Yeah, it is somehow, because, you know, when you have a single expression, it's like if you listen to Celine Dion, or if you listen to John Lennon, it's one guy. If you listen to the Beatles or if you listen to Black Sabbath, it's a group. So it's two different philosophy. One is the pinnacle of a single individual, Pinot Noir, whatever. A blend is multiple grape varietal that adds a little bit of everything to the symphony.
Yeah.
So you got to pay attention even more because you got to be into details and whatsoever. But let's be honest for 1 second, okay? I want to be completely transparent with you guys. If you think about classic wine in the world, blends are fairly rare. Bordeaux,
Yeah.
Châteauneuf-du-Pape. What else? Rioja.
Yeah.
That's it. Most of the wine that are classic are monovarietal, single varietal. So if you are starting to think and imagine that it's a symphony and instead of being one singer, well, you can start thinking about Bordeaux, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Rioja. That's pretty much it. There's a lot of blend, but most of the blend are grown in a place where a single varietal cannot express itself by itself. Most of the places that do single varietal, they are at the northern limit of being there. Riesling doesn't grow north of Germany. Pinot Noir doesn't grow north of Burgundy, except maybe in Champagne, but they do a sparkling wine. It's completely different. Cabernet Franc doesn't grow north of Loire Valley. Syrah doesn't grow north of Côte-Rôtie. It stopped growing. So because it's at the northern latitude, same thing with Sangiovese, Nebbiolo, blah, 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 it's at this pinnacle. But when you go in south of France, in south of Italy, in Mexico, because it's too warm to grow mostly those varietal, you need a lot of different varietal to add to the mix because you are not at the pinnacle of something. But Mexico has the pinnacle of agave. You know, agave doesn't go north of Mexico. That's why nobody produces tequila or mezcal. That is why it is the pinnacle of this product. And you need to think about that. You know, like you need to think about that in a lot of local product in the Americas that are native to our land. I produce maple syrup, and north of my region, there is no maple tree. And I really start reflecting on that while I was doing the project and so on. If you think about it, when you are at the northern limit of something, you are at the pinnacle also of something. And you see the same thing in in the US. If you go to north of Florida, there's a lot of pecan. It's the northern limit where the trees grows, and they are delicious. If you go in the desert of California, in Palm Desert, it's the northern limit where you can grow dates, and they are delicious. You know, so on and so on and so on. We can give so many examples.
Yeah. Well, another question. Cecile is asking, how can I describe wine that is not complex but it's good? What describers can I add?
I think simple is the word that describe it the most. But you know, what is a simple wine and what is a complex wine? For me, a simple wine is one or two category of aroma. If you see it smell like strawberry and it smell like spices, this is two family of aroma. But if you see it smell like strawberry, cherry, and raspberry, this is one family of aroma. Three aroma, one family. It's the same thing, it's red fruit. But if you start saying, let's say we have an old Bordeaux in front of us. Oh, it smells like cassis. It smells like green bell pepper. It smells like pencil shaving. It smells like roasted coffee beans. It smells like hurt. It smells like leather. You're like 6 different family of aroma. So it is complex. You know, if you smell an apple, it smells like an apple and that's it. But if you smell apple compote with a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of cane sugar, a little bit of nutmeg, and then it's put into a tart with a beautiful crust made with lard. It's much more complex. There's lot. I mean, you eat the apple fresh, but you eat the apple pie. It's not the same thing. More complex. There's more flavor. Something is baked. There is spices. There is the crust. Then you put a little bit of ice cream on it. It's not the same. It's the same apple but it's a completely different thing. And I think, you know, when it's simple. Smell like it, and that's it. And to say that the wine is simple is as important as saying that it smells like fresh strawberries for me, because it's part of the identity of the wine.
Sorry sorry for the interruption. Yeah. Hola. Yeah, because there were some sounds here, but I eliminated. Hello? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, man.
Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, man. And here's another question. How do you choose or delimitate your budget when you, for your everyday tasting? What would you be a okay budget per bottle? That's a good question when we are training.
Yeah, this is crazy because, you know, money is always like anything. If you go to university, it costs money. So if you want to train, it's going to cost money. And all my life, I mean, I was working in restaurant and using their stock and blah, blah, blah. And nowadays I receive a lot of sample and I buy a lot of wine and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, to be honest, after 15 years in this business, it is much easier for me to taste anything that I want if I ask for than any before. But when I was a young guy, it wasn't the case, you know. Um, it's weird because when you win a competition, people, they pay attention.
Yeah.
If you don't go to competition, they don't care about you. That's the way business works. When you win a competition, you wake up in the morning and you go to bed at night. You are the same exact person. But the people, they don't see you the same, right?
Yeah.
So when I was younger, I start making group of tasting. And even today, Master Sommelier, Best Sommelier the Americas, blah, 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 I still have a tasting group. This morning we taste with my tasting group. We are 5 or 6 people. So if we buy for $200 wine, it costs us $20, $30. But if I buy for $200 wine for myself, it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I don't want to waste money. So I want to drink the wine, and then it's dangerous. But when you split, it's an American concept, the tasting group concept, but I believe into it. People meet once a week, bring the wine, everybody to their turn. It's very hard at the start because we don't know why and how and this and that, but it's the best way. Community, care, people that are trying to do the same thing, have the same objective, and you split the bill. Because to start buying simple wine by yourself is very hard. And a lot of the classic wine are famous: Châteauneuf-du-Pape, Burgundy, Bordeaux, Rioja, whatever, and they cost a lot of money. So if I buy a bottle of Pomerol and I never had Pomerol in my life, and it's $200 US, if I don't have people to share with me a little bit of glass of wine to experience, I mean, it's impossible. Even me, not that I'm better than anybody, but I don't want to pay $200 for a bottle of wine. It's too much, you know. I taste those wine. I know those wine, but between me and you, I mean, do you think that my tongue has the taste to taste $200 bottle of wine? No. And at that point, Marco, you did those tasting where you were sharing really cool wine. That's another way.
Yeah.
Sharing is caring, you know. If you are a corporate business and you pay wine at a very high price, it's a different story. But if you are a young sommelier and you need to pay $100 of dollar for a bottle of wine, it's crazy. So you need to make friends and make groups of tasting. That's the only advice I can give you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we can have a group. I mean, besides this, we can create some groups to taste, and I will let you know in the week, during the week, what we can do.
And you know, Marco, there's something I saw with the pandemic, with the COVID-19 pandemic. Before, the wine producer, they were coming to Canada, to US, to Mexico. We taste the wine, blah, blah, blah. We buy the wine, blah, blah, blah. But today they cannot do it. So they are shipping small bottle of wine so we can do a little tasting. I think that's genius. Nobody never talked about that before the pandemic. But think about it. 2 ounces of wine, there's 25 ounces in a bottle, 26. You can do 10 or 12 people. You split the price. Everybody receive their little bottle. You do a Zoom session. Boom. Takes 1 hour. Even if you want, Marco, we could do, I'll give you an example, because now with the technology, with Zoom and everything is there. You could tell me, hey, Pierre, I'm going to go to the store. I'm going to buy those 2 or 3 wine. Okay, you buy your 2 or 3 wine. I buy them in Canada. We taste live the same wine. Everything is possible today. Everything.
Yeah.
But you need to do it on a regular basis, because most of the tasting group, they last for 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks, and then it's done. And if you don't practice, you will not become better. Every week is difficult, but you need to persevere.
Yeah, sure. I will do it, and for sure. And I will, thank you, my friend, for this. And Jose Sandoval is asking, what varieties do you think are the easiest to identify in blind tasting, and what do you think are the most difficult?
It's different for everybody, very different for everybody. But personally, I always think that in white wine, I had trouble with Gruner Veltliner and Albarino. Very difficult for me to find those grape varietal, but very easy to find, let's say, Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. And I think it's easy for a lot of people because it's so unique.
Yeah.
And then in red wine, I say that I had difficulties finding. It's not true. I'm trying to find. For a long time, I had difficulties finding the difference between American and American Merlot and American Cabernet Sauvignon. Because Cabernet Sauvignon has a little bit of green, but in California they are so ripe. But then I live in California, and I got drunk on Cabernet Sauvignon, American Cabernet Sauvignon, and I drink Cabernet Sauvignon, and now I think I can see what is American Cabernet Sauvignon. But sometimes we taste, but you also need to drink the wine so you have the full experience.
Yeah.
It's very important. But in terms of red wine, I think Loire Valley, Cabernet Franc is very easy to find. Australian Shiraz is very easy to find. But again, let me be real for a moment. If you live in Canada, if you live in London, where I work, you are able to taste all those wine from the world every day if you want. You go to the grocery store, you buy them, boom, done. But if you live in Congo, if you live in Indonesia, if you live in Mexico, if you live in Bolivia, you don't necessarily have access to those wine. And what is important here is that what is easy for you is not easy for me, and vice versa. You know, I live in Australia, so for me, Shiraz from Australia is, I serve it every day for lunch, for dinner. I know all the great producer. It's there because it's also memory.
Yeah.
I live in California. Cabernet Sauvignon, easy. I went to Napa Valley every week. Super easy. It's also experience. But then
Yeah.
what is
Well,
easy for you might not be easy for me. And when you are blind tasting, I mean, nobody is deciding what's easy for any other competitor.
okay. In tasting, what percentage is nose and what is taste for you?
70-30, if I need to do a percentage. 70 percent,
Let me tell,
70% the taste and 30% the nose.
let me tell
Because
you.
the
Yeah, go ahead.
nose you smell, and then you put on the palate. Then you feel tactile. You do retroolfaction, so you smell at the same time that you have it on the palate, and then you swallow or you spit. I mean, that's where you are confirming everything that you see on the nose, or you're changing. So I think the palate is so important, and the problem that I see, I will tell you, I see people, I will tell you what not to do and what to do, okay? Not to do, okay? Too much movement in the mouth, impossible to pay attention. When you eat something delicious, you go to quintonil. Do you eat like this? No. Take your time, you chew, you taste the different flavors, you take your time, you pay attention. Now, when you taste wine, you should do the same. When I see people shaking the wine in the mouth like a washing machine, it's impossible. It's impossible to taste like that and be a good taster. Maybe it is possible for certain people because it became an habit. And I don't judge, but I like to let the wine sit, feel, like you feel the texture of a roast chicken, or you feel the texture of a nice taco, or you feel the texture of anything. I don't need more than that. I let it sit, it touch my cheek, it touch my teeth, my gum, retroolfaction, not too aggressive, then I spit. And the less you taste, the better it is. And that's why you need to pay attention. Because if you taste 4 or 5 times the same wine, your brain is telling you, okay, I don't taste anymore. The thing that happened with, sorry, my phone is ringing. But the thing I want to say is that let's say that you go into a taqueria or a restaurant and it smells very good. After 5 or 10 minutes, you don't smell like it smells very good.
Yeah.
Your brain is blocking. So if you taste 5 or 6 times the same thing, you are not serving yourself. You better taste once, twice, pay attention, that's it. But when you drink very good wine, let's say me and Marco, we sit at the restaurant in Argentina, gaucho, a nice piece of steak, and we drink Catena Zapata, early vintage, Ninkassia Vineyard. Very complex wine. We taste the wine, we eat the steak, and then You go back to the wine, you go back to the wine. And it's fascinating. The wine is changing all the time. And that what is also high quality, expensive wine is not something that stays the same. If you buy potato chip, they all taste the same. But if you drink great wine, every sip is different. And that's what is intellectually stimulating because you become curious about going to the next sip. Same thing with food. Complex food, good food, tasty food. There is good food that makes you feel good. But when you eat very high-end food, it should be like cerebral, like a Picasso. You know, Picasso is art. It brings emotion. It's cerebral. It's the heart. It's the taste. So he brings an emotion. It's cerebral and it's confusing. If you put a dog in front of a Picasso, there is no emotion.
Mhm.
But human, we are sensitive. That's why you need to pay attention.
Okay, perfect. So, Roberto, you raise your hand again. You want to say something?
Yes, yes, please. Pierre, another question. For beginners in training the wine tasting, how do you recommend to start the training with the same variety from different regions to contrast the differences between that region, or tasting the different varieties at the same time to contrast the differences between the grapes, or literally start with one variety?
Yeah, I think, Roberto, you have multiple questions in one question. So I will try to answer. I think grape varietal is where you should start. Because between me and you, if you say that the one is Barbaresco and it's Barolo, or if you say it's Barolo and it's Barbaresco, you know, the two villages are next to each other, you know? So there's no difference for me. It's not where we are trying to be smart. This is very small detail. But if you don't know that Nebbiolo is the grape varietal of Barbaresco and Barolo, and what tastes Nebbiolo, it's going to be very hard to become a good taster, you know? So I think there's a lot of theory into tasting and understanding, because I did competition and blah, 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 and all my life I've been learning things, reading, learning, going to school, blah, blah, blah. And then very recently, I realized that I need to stop to learn, but I need to start understand. When you understand, it's much easier to retain the information. Where you are trying to learn 500 villages or Premier Cru in Burgundy, it makes zero sense. But when you understand that it was called les enseigneurs because it was the teachers of a monastic order that had the plot of land, and that's why it was always women that took care of that place, and it's very high quality on Meursault, well, then it makes sense. You understand? When you understand something, it makes sense. And one thing that is important into wine is to have a little bit of understanding of Latin language, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish, um, you know, German, English, because when you understand what's written on the bottle, it's much easier to understand what's inside the bottle. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Well, a lot of things to learn, my friend. Thank you very much for all these advices. I mean, it was very clear, very precise, and not only about techniques, not only about the experiences, also about the very deep words that you gave us. Something in me is now I got the writing for my blind tasting, my personal blind tasting, because let me tell you something. I think that I use in my life too much the nose instead of the texture or palate, and I pay too much attention on that part. Uh, and now I think that I have to come back again and to pay more attention in the texture of the wines, and to see the differences, because yeah.
Hey, Marco, do you smell the taco or do you eat the taco? You need to start eating the wine instead of smelling the wine.
Yeah. Probably I smell too much and I drink. No, I drink too much as well, but not paying attention. Not paying attention. Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, my friend. You are a master, and I really like the way that you teach, that you share, and it's very amazing the tips that you gave us today. I don't know, guys, if you have any other question before we finish. It's the time. It's the right
Can
time.
I ask the last question?
Yes, Robert. Please.
I promise it's the last question.
No. It's okay. That you are the only one who wants to talk.
Thank you. Pierre, I believe that before in a competition, before they start the testing, the bottle of wines will be opened sometime before to start. Then, do you think there is a good idea for training? Open my bottles of the wine sometime before to start my training, because I think that time can change the aromas or senses in the wine.
So, Roberto, what do you do for a living? You're an engineer?
Yes.
Yeah. So you are trying to think how the competition is built to figure out the final result. So if you don't understand how it works, it is impossible for you to find the solution. That's how it works in your brain. Now you need to stop paying attention to all those small details. Focus on what's in the glass. Try to stop being a robot and always replicating the same movement, and listen to your little voice, to your feeling. You have feeling, you have emotion, you have talent. Don't try to overthink the competition. What you are dealing with right now is small detail. It's like somebody trying to make a coffee. Should I eat the kettle at 180 Fahrenheit? Should I weight the coffee? Should I weight the amount of sugar I put in the coffee? Should I take the temperature of the milk that I put in the coffee? Should I choose the type of earthenware in what is made my cup of coffee so I can enhance my experience of coffee drinking? Roberto, start drinking the coffee, please. Because what you are thinking is very intelligent. Because, no, trust me, you are detail oriented. You are thinking of how the competition is built, try to control the environment like a scientist. And this is brilliant. But at the end of the day, you still need to taste the wine. So you can train opening the wine in front, controlling the temperature. You can try to taste in the same glass that's going to be there in the competition. But you are focusing so much on the final result that you're going to miss the bus of tasting the wine, because it's a wine tasting competition, not a wine temperature, not a wine opening, and not a glassware of wine competition. So you need to go back to the first objective, tasting the wine. That's what should be your main focus. Then if you control all the small details, of course it can help. You know, when you are doing pastry, you weight everything: the salt, the sugar, the flour, the liquid ingredient and you do always the same result. The pastry is always the same result. When you cook with a little bit of spice, and today is a little bit more humid, so you need to work that way, put a little bit less liquid, and da 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 da. So it's a little bit more intuitive. If you want to be a good taster, you need to be a good balance between technique, what you are trying to put up front, and intuition. It's a good balance between the two. If you are too much into technique, you're going to be like a robot. If you are too much into intuition, you're going to be like a clown. So yes, of course, it makes a difference by pre-opening your wine, by controlling the temperature, by controlling the glassware. All small detail make a difference. I told you, you need to pay attention, and the difference is in detail. But if you are unable to taste and you don't know that Pinot Noir grows in Burgundy, you can control all of those details. It's not going to bring you anywhere, man.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Perfect. So we have last question, Oscar. You want to say something?
Okay, thank you. Maybe it's linked to the previous question and a reply, because yes, how to balance your senses and your experience in tasting versus a methodology. There are many different technologies, so you could have your own, or a technique to do the blind tasting, no? Because in my case, I was many years a wine lover and with no real technique, and I enjoy it. But then I decided to go and explore the techniques and to go through certifications and things like that. So I went to a certain point that I was a little bit confused between my senses or my experience and the technique. And most of the time, finding the right balance was a little bit difficult for me. So how to balance that and don't hesitate, because sometimes if you hesitate, you got it wrong. And for example, in my case, also when I do blind tasting, I put some very slight music. There is even some music for wine tasting, and it helps. So what do you think about that?
Well, Oscar, you told me all about your life, and I appreciate, but what is the question?
Yeah, how to balance your senses and your experience in tasting versus a technique.
Yeah. So it's a very good question, because, we eat 3 times a day, but do you eat to survive or because you are hungry, or you eat because you want to have a nice meal with friends, or you eat because you enjoy a certain escamoles and it's this time of the year when they are out, or you eat because you are a professional taster and you are testing the menu of the St. Regis in Mexico City. 5 different reasons to taste, You're talking in your story, what I see is that you are an amateur enjoying wine. And then you want to understand what is enjoyable into wine. So you go to different formation and blah, blah, blah. And then you learn standardization. You know the word standardization? Trying to standardize something to optimize something. So that's where you are at. Before, you were just drinking, having fun, emotion, curious, fun. And then suddenly you get stuck up into that mold of standardized medium plus this, medium minus this, and blah, 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 blah. This is what we call a curve. So I don't know where you are in that curve, but you need to find a balance, because life is about equilibrium. So you were the amateur that didn't know anything about wine, that was drinking wine and having fun. You went to the professional kind of thing that you need to learn how to taste wine and blah, 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 blah. And then you lost the joy of drinking wine because it becomes so cerebral. And then you got to be in between. Understand what you're drinking, but enjoy what you're drinking. And I think a good taster is a good mix between the two. If you are too technical, you are almost like a robot. And if you are too intuitive, like you were at the beginning when you were amateur, you're a clown because you will try to guess things. So you need to use the tools when it's right. The problem with all the standardization and optimization is that people, they don't reflect anymore. They use this to find the solution. So you have tools in your in your mind that you learn at your different classes. You have the tools. You just need to understand when to use the right tool. Do you take a screwdriver to hit on a nail? No, you take a hammer. But it's the same thing with wine tasting. Get different tools, understanding the process, but then you still gotta live the process. Because it's not only understanding and having the tool that makes you a great chef, for example. The people, they have professional kitchen, great copperware, great ingredient, and they cook like shit, even if they follow the recipe.
Yeah.
Because the recipe is on internet, but it's like Jimi Hendrix, you know? The partition is on internet. You can play Jimi Hendrix, da 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 da, and you can play Jimi Hendrix, blah, 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 blah. But nobody can play Jimi Hendrix like Jimi Hendrix. So even though you know, you understand, you master all the technique in any field, you still need to do it. That's what I was trying to explain to Roberto. He's absolutely right. He's hashing down the process and understanding it and trying to assimilate and asking questions because he's smart, but he still needs to taste the wine. You know?
Okay.
And when we are enjoying as an amateur, we are not thinking about that because it's pure pleasure.
Okay. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Pierre. Thank you, my friend. So, I don't want to take your time too much now. It's been a pleasure to be with you, tasting and with all this information. I will come back again to do like a beginner. I will try to do it again. You know, it's one of the things that I love from wine, that you can start at any time and learning in a different way. Now I will try to do it in a different way, following some things that I get from you today. It's very amazing the way that you are tasting, and these kind of things surprise me every day. So, guys, any other comment, questions? Otherwise, I will say to my friend Pierre, thank you very much, and I hope to see you very soon, bro. Anywhere.
Okay. Peace, Marco, and let's try to do it. You know, anytime you want to do a small session, we send a small bottle. We taste. We can even say what is the wine and just describe the wine and try to understand them. Whatever you want. You know, at the end of the day, like I said, you ask me and I will show up. And 1 year ago, it would have been impossible to think that we can have this discussion online on Zoom. Impossible.
Yeah,
I didn't even know what was Zoom. And today, you can sit in Mexico, I can sit in Canada, and we can have a tasting session. And as soon as the border reopen, boom, I go to Mexico. We take 2, 4, 5, 6 days if you want. If people, they want to meet at some place and we do tasting. I mean, it's so, I don't mind to give you the partition because I know you cannot play it like me. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Everyone plays different.
But I believe in giving the recipe more than hiding the recipe. It's two different philosophy. Great chef, they don't want to know, they don't want to tell you what's in the recipe. I am not in that philosophy. I give everything, and if you can do better than me, I hope somebody do better than me. You know, at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah, that's why we're friends. We are in the same road, the same kind of view. I mean, the same philosophy. I always like to share it. Yeah, Yeah, bro. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, I contact you as soon as I create the group. I will contact you for sure. And guys, thank you very much for your time also. And we keep in touch. Okay, my friend.
Okay, all the best. Bye bye.
Have a
Thank
nice
you.
weekend, bro.